evening, everybody. Welcome back to Dialogue. I'm Etoile Pinder, and I am here with Deshon Fox, the author of The Midddle Theory, which is this fantastic new book that was just published at the end of 2009. And we were just about to talk about the laws of gravity, so we're going to go right back into that. So tell me, so you're explaining that there's physical laws out there that we know exist.
Right. We know physical laws exist, and we accept that physical laws exist. Scientists agree on physical laws. But I think we often are not as aware that they're spiritual laws. There really are spiritual laws that are just as real and specific as physical laws. For example,
Do they follow? Okay, give me an example, because I may have to.
I'll give you an example.
Delve into
if we
this.
say love heals, right?
Okay.
Just say love heals
Right.
as a spiritual law. I accept that that's true. And we can see that that's true, and we can see evidence of the fact that love actually does heal. You talked about it earlier, that love, there have been studies that have been done now where, you have someone who's ill, and you have persons who are thinking positive things about them, who are loving them, and that actually results in a physical healing.
Yeah.
So that's something that's actually documented. But that's just one level of healing.
Well, no, and I mean, I want to just go on with that because, again, for the people out there who maybe do question this and some of the foofiness of this, no, but one of a really interesting recent study that I had read in one of the Malcolm Gladwell books was this study that they did with elderly people who were in nursing homes. And I don't know if you'd seen this, but so, a lot of the time people who are in nursing homes, they're alone for a lot of the time. So what they did is they gave plants, and these are just plants. But they gave plants to, say, 100 of the people within the nursing home. And then they let them take care of their plants. And then after 2 weeks, they took away the plants from half of the people.
Right.
And they let the other half continue to care for their plants. And this terrible thing happened. That for the 50 people who had their plants taken away from them, there was this huge increase in mortality and other morbidities. I mean, the people got really sick. Literally, they started dying as a result of having this item taken away from them that they were essentially bestowing love on, taking care of. And even though it was just a plant,
Right.
I'm a gardener. I love
Right.
my plants. Like, nobody can say I don't love my plants. I love them. And they actually had to stop the study because the effects were so dramatic that
Right.
simply this simple item of giving an elderly person a plant to take care of improved their health in a
Right.
huge way. And it was really quite interesting, just the sort of concept that love does heal is out there. Even if you're not the one receiving the love, giving the love can also be healing.
That's true. And I mean, I think it's a little bit surprising why it would be surprising, because most of us believe in that human beings are spiritual beings as well. We do,
Yes.
most of us say we believe that. And so the question then becomes, if there's physical side to us, and we know that we can see what the physical does, and how the physical can exert and do things, but what does the spirit do? The spirit must have some influence. It must have
Right.
some effect. So I think that the idea that the spiritual part of us can also exert influence and can cause things to happen shouldn't be that startling. I mean, I think we have a lot of evidence, religion aside and all those things aside.
Yeah.
We know that when we give freely without any thought of a reward, we know how that makes us feel. I mean, all of us know we feel uplifted, we feel whole, we feel good. So that's real. That's not a ooey gooey spiritual thing.
No, and it's real. And as a biochemist, it's real because our brain is
Exactly.
is releasing neurotransmitters,
Right.
which are, whether it's the specific endorphins or whatever it is, but that experience releases chemicals within our brains that give us this happy feeling. Like, there is a measurable physical effect of doing putting these spiritual laws into practice.
Right. And, I think one of the things that you find in the Midddle Theory, and one of the things that I think a lot of readers have responded to, is that, there are things you can do now
Right.
to improve everything in your life. You don't have to wait for anything. You don't have to wait until the show is over. You can start right now as you're watching this show. And I think we give up that kind of that power. We give it up. We always waiting for something to happen or for someone to do something for us. And one of the things I think we need to, it's very important as we become more spiritual in our lives, is to become reflective and to truly look at our lives and look at the world around us and to live, not simply respond or react to things all the time, but to really develop a life of having an internal dialogue and questioning things and trying to understand how I feel in every moment, and why do I feel this way.
But this, man, it's all well and good, but this seems like it takes a lot of effort.
It does seem that way, and I must say to you that, when I first embraced some of these ideas, it does seem like you're micromanaging your life, but really you aren't. That's the flip side. What we do in most of our lives is micromanage, but we do it unconsciously. We're just, the light is red, so we pump the horn, we're angry and we're frustrated.
Yes.
So all of these things seem to just be happening without our control. What balance does for us when you become a more balanced person is you actually get in the driver's seat. So you see where you're going, and you know where you want to go, and you go there. So it's not really tedious. It's just being purposeful and being aware of what's happening and making very deliberate, conscious decisions.
And I have to say, again, as a scientist, one of the things I really liked in your book, and sort of going off of this, that it puts you in the driver's seat, is you talk a lot, and you talked before about balance in the economy, or balance within our bodies. And one of the basic things, I'm a diabetic, so I really know about balance within the body. Most of the things, they have little scales when they're talking about diabetes, because you've got to balance your insulin and your diet and exercise and all these things. And even within, at that biochemical sort of cellular level within us, the homeostasis you talked about, this requires energy in order for these things to remain in balance. For me as a diabetic, to stay in balance, I know I've got to have this many calories. If I do this extra exercise, I'm going to reduce my insulin. But all of this takes energy. It takes the energy of the food to keep my body going, surviving. And I think that sort of this, as you said, lack of micromanaging maybe, is also that energy we need to keep our spiritual lives in balance.
Right.
We all know we have to eat in order to survive in the physical sense. But I think so many of us are starving, for lack of a better word, within the spiritual sort of more, our souls, whatever that sort of aspect of our body that we want to talk about, or our being,
right.
that's, we're not doing the prayer maybe at the level we should. We don't meditate. We're not paying attention to these things that we should be paying attention to.
That's very true. And I think the physical analogies are always helpful, because it really helps us to understand. So I'll go with that again.
Yeah.
You talk about eating. Every day we know that we have to eat something in order to sustain our health and our vitality. And the your spiritual life is no different. There are things you have to do. There are things that have to be done. There's no free lunch, really. There's not like spirituality or being a spiritual person is simply you just sit down and do nothing. I mean, you could do that, and maybe you'll be okay. But you do have to. There are things that you have to do in order to strengthen your spiritual self. And we talked about prayer. So there is effort in that sense. There is something to do. But I think one of the things that's empowering and liberating when we truly begin to understand how we become more spiritual and more loving, really, because ultimately you become a more loving person, is that there's nothing outside of you that you have to go and do to begin this process.
Yeah.
You can begin this process simply by becoming aware of certain things, becoming aware of your feelings about certain persons or your feelings about your own self. For example, you have a lot of persons who deal with a lot of self-hatred, really.
Yes.
They really don't love who they are. They don't love what they do. They don't love how they look.
Right.
They don't love themselves. And so everything else is going to be flawed from there. I mean, there's nothing you really can work with. If you don't get to a point in life where you fundamentally really love who you are, it doesn't matter what your job is or how much money you make, but you love who you are, you love yourself, then there's everything else can grow from there, and then you can love other human beings and you can develop.
But I got a question for you though, Deshon, and maybe with some of the research you would have done while you wrote the book or some of the people you encountered. I mean, people have been saying this for a long time.
Right.
From Lao Tzu and the Tao Te Ching, 2,000 years ago to, Jesus,
right,
to following all the great philosophers. Everybody has been essentially saying this sort of thing, that it's within you, that it's
Right.
not about, even within the last few hundred years where capitalism has reigned supreme, that it's not about how much money you make. It's not what your power status is with your job. It's not about these things. But yet you see the way society is constructed.
Right.
And we can write our books and we can keep on saying these things, but it doesn't seem to be penetrating all that much into sort of the fabric of society. How do you think we can sort of actually really make a change? Does this have to be done at the preschool level, middle school level? Should we have the Midddle Theory for 4-year-olds? Or how do we, because we know this. I'm fortunate enough to know a lot of wealthy people, and a lot of them are miserable. It really, I know a lot of poor people too, and a lot of them are miserable as well,
Right.
which just really does show that it doesn't matter how much money you have, you can be miserable if you are not in touch with yourself, if you don't have self-respect, if you don't have self-love.
That's a really good question, Etoile, and I think that really gets at the heart of it, because you're right. I mean, these spiritual truths have been around for centuries, thousands of years. So, we've heard these things before, but I think very often in our lives we begin to just respond and just live our lives on a very superficial level.
Yeah.
We're not really. For example, we don't really find the thing that we want to do in life. We don't really live our passion, for example. A lot of persons are simply, trying to make a paycheck or trying to do this or trying to do the next. And it's very easy to get into that kind of life. It's very easy. But that's one of the things that I talk about in Midddle Theory. And I think, as you point out, so many persons don't take that path. And I don't know, how to get to a place where the majority of human beings are deciding to investigate reality, I call it. Yeah. You have to investigate reality. I think all of us are born into this world with, we're molded by our environment, we're molded by our parents and our community. That's fine. All of us have that same foundation. If you were born, for example, in Bhutan or China or Japan, perhaps you were molded in a Buddhist kind of environment, so you
Right.
learn to accept those principles. If you were born in Afghanistan or Iraq, perhaps you were molded in an Islamic environment. If you were born here, perhaps you were molded in a Christian environment. So that's all fine and good, but at some point in time, you have to investigate reality for yourself. There has to be that moment when you begin to question things, when you begin to say, well, why is it this way? Or why should we stand up? Or why should we clap our hands? And a lot of times, we discourage that in our children. We tell them, no, just fall in line. So it begins very early in life, this kind of falling in line. And I think what happens oftentimes is that it begins this process of simply becoming a robot on some level, right. Where we're not investigating, we're not turning over stones anymore, we're not playing with butterflies anymore, we're not looking at the clouds and wondering how it's going to form or shape. We're just kind of being pushed through life. And I think that's why balance is so important, really slowing things down a bit. But the amazing thing about becoming more balanced is that even though things slow down in terms of your inner dialogue, in a way, you feel more alive.
Right.
You feel more empowered. You feel like you could take on the world. And so there's this kind of interesting dynamic where as things, so to speak, slow down, things speed up.
No, and you talked about it, sort of that reinvigoration that you get if you truly are dedicated to either investing in prayer or meditation, and that you do get this reinvigoration. You get
Right.
this sort of that's true. They always do say, if you want something done, give it to the busiest person you know.
Right.
And in a way, it is this. I think it's that sort of person who is taking the time to do these different things,
Right.
has a better understanding of the balance in their life where different things fit in. We're going to take a quick break, though, because I don't think he's given enough practical tips yet, and I want more practicality about how we really can achieve, as individuals, this sense of balance, this inner peace, for lack of a better term, as well, and how I really think that if all of us as individuals are practicing these techniques that he's talking to us about, that the Bahamas as a country will also sort of fall a little bit more into balance, because we know that our country is out of whack right now. So come back with us after the break to talk some more about that.
Harry talking fool, Jimmy looking in the head. He breaks you the bush crying, oh Lord, I got dead. It's my and short, she running out the house. Forget she's scared of blood, almost fall.